Not guilty. Ms. Baldwin. Guilty. Mr. Barrasso. Not guilty. Mr. Bennett. Not guilty. Ms. Baldwin. Guilty. Mr. Barrasso. Not guilty. Mr. Bennett. Guilty. Mr. Cornyn. Not guilty. Ms. Cortez Masto. Guilty. Mr. Cotton. Not guilty. Mr. Kramer.
Okay, so you want to talk about a courtroom explosion that nobody saw coming? Well, buckle up, because what just happened in federal court is the kind of betrayal that Shakespeare would have written about Mark Meadows, the man who stood by Donald Trump's side through every scandal, every controversy, every single moment of chaos during those final days in the White House. That same Mark Meadows just became Trump's worst nightmare. And I mean that literally, because what Meadows just did in that courtroom has Trump's entire defense team ready to jump ship. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Not guilty. Mr. Murphy. Guilty. Mrs. Murray. Guilty. Mr. Paul. Not guilty. Guilty. Ms. Smith. Guilty. Ms. Stabenow. Guilty. Mr. Sullivan.
Picture the scene here for a moment. The courtroom is packed to capacity with reporters, lawyers, legal observers, all waiting to see what's going to happen in these criminal cases that have been building against Trump for months. Everyone knows Meadows has been cooperating with prosecutors, but nobody, and I mean nobody, expected what was about to unfold. When Meadows took that witness stand and raised his right hand to swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you could feel the tension in that room ratchet up to levels that veteran court reporters said they'd never experienced before. What happened next was nothing short of a political earthquake. Meadows didn't just testify, he opened the floodgates. He brought receipts, and when I say receipts, I'm talking about the kind of documentary evidence that prosecutors dream about: emails, text messages, call logs, handwritten notes, recordings. Everything that Trump thought was protected by executive privilege or personal loyalty just got dumped right there in open court. The looks on the faces of Trump's legal team went from confident to concerned to absolutely panicked in a matter of minutes. According to witnesses in that courtroom, the moment Meadows started describing specific conversations with Trump about overturning the election, you could hear audible gasps from the gallery. This wasn't secondhand information or speculation. This was Meadows saying, "I was in the room when Trump said this, and Trump directly ordered me to do that." Every single word that came out of Meadows' mouth was another nail in the coffin of Trump's defense strategy, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. The prosecutors were barely able to contain their satisfaction as Meadows laid out, piece by piece, the entire conspiracy from start to finish. But here's what makes this betrayal so devastating. Meadows knows where all the bodies are buried. As Trump's chief of staff during those crucial final months, he was involved in every meeting, every phone call, every decision. He was the gatekeeper, the enforcer, the guy who made things happen when Trump wanted them done. And now he's sitting there in federal court under oath, spilling every single secret. He knows the prosecutors are asking him detailed questions, and Meadows is answering them all. No Fifth Amendment, no claims of privilege, just straightforward answers that are destroying any chance Trump had of beating these charges. The reaction from Trump's camp has been nothing short of volcanic. Sources inside Trump's inner circle are describing a scene of absolute chaos and fury. Trump himself is reportedly in a state of rage that makes his previous meltdowns look calm by comparison. He's calling Meadows every name in the book, accusing him of being a traitor, a coward, a deep state plant. The word betrayal is being thrown around constantly, and there's serious talk about Trump trying to find some way, any way, to discredit or silence Meadows before more damage is done. But here's the thing, it's too late. The testimony is already on the record. The evidence has already been submitted, and the damage is already done. What's really striking about this moment is how it represents a complete collapse of the wall of loyalty that Trump has always relied on. For years, Trump has operated under the assumption that his people would never flip, that loyalty to him would always outweigh legal jeopardy or moral considerations. But Meadows just shattered that assumption in the most public and devastating way possible. He's showing everyone else in Trump's orbit that when push comes to shove, when you're facing serious federal charges, loyalty to Trump isn't worth destroying your own life, and that message is reverberating through Trump world like a shockwave. The timing of Meadows' testimony couldn't be worse for Trump. These criminal cases are already moving forward at a rapid pace, and now prosecutors have their star witness, someone who can provide firsthand, direct evidence of Trump's involvement in multiple alleged crimes. This isn't some low-level staffer or disgruntled former employee. This is the chief of staff, the guy who was literally at Trump's right hand during the most critical period being investigated. His credibility, combined with the documentary evidence he's providing, creates a prosecutorial case that legal experts are calling virtually unbeatable. One former federal prosecutor said that in 30 years of practice, they'd never seen a more devastating witness flip in a major political case. Okay, so let's dive deep into the actual evidence that Meadows brought to that courtroom, because the details are absolutely mind-blowing. We're not talking about vague recollections or general impressions here. Meadows came armed with specific documents, specific communications, specific evidence that lays out in black and white exactly how Trump allegedly orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election results. And the way he presented this evidence, methodically walking through each piece, explaining its context and significance, it was like watching a masterclass in how to build a criminal case. First up, the fake elector scheme. And this is where Meadows' testimony gets really damaging. He provided prosecutors with emails and text messages showing Trump personally directed the recruitment of fake electors in multiple states. We're talking about documented communications where Trump is explicitly telling his team to find people willing to sign fraudulent electoral certificates. Meadows testified that Trump was fully aware these certificates were fraudulent, that he knew they had no legal basis, but he wanted them created anyway as part of his plan to pressure Mike Pence on January 6th. The level of detail in these communications is staggering. Names, dates, specific instructions about how to create these fraudulent documents. The documentation Meadows provided includes a particularly damning email chain from December 2020, where White House lawyers are explicitly warning that the fake elector scheme is illegal and could result in criminal charges for everyone involved. In this email chain, which Meadows authenticated in court, the lawyers lay out in detail why this plan violates federal law, why it constitutes fraud, and why participating in it would expose everyone to serious legal jeopardy. And right there in the chain is Trump's response, forwarded through Meadows, essentially saying he doesn't care about the legal risks. He wants it done anyway. This is consciousness of guilt written in black and white, the kind of evidence that makes defense attorneys lose sleep at night. Then there's the pressure campaign against state officials, and this is where Meadows' testimony becomes even more explosive. He described in detail being ordered by Trump to contact state election officials and pressure them to find votes or change results. Meadows provided call logs showing dozens of calls to Georgia officials, Arizona officials, Michigan official, all with the same message: change the results or face consequences. He testified that Trump would often listen in on these calls, sometimes jumping in personally to apply pressure, sometimes directing Meadows on what threats to make. And we're not talking about subtle pressure here. We're talking about explicit threats of criminal prosecution, promises of political retaliation, offers of pardons if they'd play ball. One particularly shocking piece of evidence is a handwritten note from Meadows documenting a conversation with Trump where the former president explicitly said, and I'm quoting from the testimony here, "I don't care if we don't have evidence. I don't care if the claims aren't true. We need to create enough doubt to justify sending it back to the states." This note, written in Meadows' own handwriting and authenticated by him in court, shows clear intent to deceive and defraud. It's the kind of evidence that prosecutors call a smoking gun because it shows Trump knew his claims were false, but pushed them anyway. And Meadows testified that this wasn't an isolated incident. This was Trump's consistent position throughout the entire post-election period. The evidence about January 6th itself is equally damning. Meadows testified about multiple meetings in the days leading up to the Capitol attack where Trump discussed using the crowd to pressure Congress. He provided text messages he received during the riot from members of Congress, Trump family members, and Fox News personalities all begging him to get Trump to call off the mob. These messages, which Meadows read aloud in court, paint a picture of chaos and desperation, while Trump refused to act. One message from Donald Trump Jr. reads, "He's got to condemn this ASAP. They're going to destroy everything we've accomplished." Another from a Republican congressman simply says, "Mark, he needs to stop this now. People are going to die." And through it all, Meadows testified Trump was watching the violence on TV and refusing to act. But perhaps the most devastating evidence Meadows provided relates to the classified documents case. He testified that Trump routinely took classified documents to the residence, that he would often show them to people without clearances, and that when the National Archives started asking for documents back, Trump explicitly ordered his staff to hide boxes and lie about what they had. Meadows provided emails and texts showing the coordination of moving boxes at Mar-a-Lago, including messages where Trump's staff discussed which boxes to hide and where to hide them. He even testified about specific instances where Trump showed classified military plans to visitors at Mar-a-Lago, bragging about having access to secrets that other people couldn't see. Okay, so now we need to talk about what this all means for Trump's legal defense. Because what Meadows has done here is basically demolished every single defense strategy Trump's lawyers had been planning. They were going to argue Trump genuinely believed the election was stolen. Well, here's Meadows testifying that Trump knew his claims were false. They were going to argue Trump was relying on advice of counsel. Well, here's evidence of Trump ignoring his lawyers' warnings that his actions were illegal. They were going to argue Trump wasn't directly involved in the various schemes. Well, here's his own chief of staff testifying that Trump personally directed every single aspect of the conspiracy. The ripple effects of Meadows' testimony are already being felt throughout Trump world. Other potential defendants and witnesses are reportedly scrambling to cut their own deals with prosecutors before it's too late. If Meadows flipped, the thinking goes, then nobody is safe. The loyalty that Trump has always counted on is crumbling faster than anyone expected. Sources are telling us that at least 3 other high-level Trump associates have reached out to prosecutors in the last 48 hours alone, all looking to cooperate before they end up on the wrong side of this prosecution. What's particularly devastating for Trump is that Meadows isn't just providing evidence about one crime or one incident. He's providing a roadmap to multiple criminal conspiracies, the fake elector scheme, the pressure on state officials, the January 6th incitement, the classified documents obstruction. Meadows was involved in all of it, and he's testifying about all of it. Prosecutors are essentially getting 4 or 5 major criminal cases worth of evidence from a single cooperating witness. It's the kind of prosecutorial windfall that happens maybe once in a generation. The legal experts watching this unfold are unanimous in their assessment. Trump's legal situation just went from bad to catastrophic. One former federal prosecutor said that Meadows' testimony alone would be enough to convict, but when you combine it with all the documentary evidence he's providing, it's overwhelming. Another legal analyst pointed out that juries tend to find insider witnesses extremely credible, especially when they're testifying against their own interests. Meadows has nothing to gain from lying here. In fact, he's destroying his own reputation and relationships by testifying. That gives him enormous credibility with a jury. Trump's legal team is reportedly in complete disarray. Some lawyers want to attack Meadows' credibility, but how do you attack the credibility of Trump's own hand-picked chief of staff? Others want to argue that Meadows is lying to save himself. But the documentary evidence backs up everything he's saying. Still others are apparently pushing Trump to consider a plea deal, arguing that going to trial with this evidence against him would be suicidal. But Trump is reportedly refusing to even consider that option, insisting that he can still beat the charges despite what everyone around him is telling him. The political implications of Meadows' betrayal are equally significant. Republicans who have been defending Trump are finding it increasingly difficult to maintain that position. How do you defend someone when their own chief of staff is testifying under oath that they committed crimes? Some GOP senators and representatives are starting to distance themselves, using carefully worded statements about letting the legal process play out. Others are staying silent, hoping this will somehow blow over. But the reality is that Meadows' testimony has fundamentally changed the political calculation for everyone in the Republican Party. What we're witnessing here is nothing less than the complete collapse of Donald Trump's house of cards. For years, he's managed to avoid accountability through a combination of loyalty, intimidation, and legal maneuvering, but Meadows' testimony has blown all of that up. The loyalty is gone, the intimidation isn't working, and the legal maneuvering can't overcome this level of evidence. This is the moment that prosecutors have been building toward, the moment when the walls finally close in and there's no escape route left. And here's the thing that should really worry Trump. Meadows knows everything. Every meeting, every phone call, every scheme, every crime. He was there for all of it, and now he's talking. The prosecutors are going to squeeze every last bit of information out of him, and he's going to give it to them because his own freedom depends on it. This isn't just cooperation. This is complete and total capitulation. Meadows has essentially become the prosecution's star witness, and there's nothing Trump can do to stop it. The courtroom eruption when Meadows revealed these horrific secrets wasn't just about the shock of the betrayal. It was about the recognition that this changes everything. Trump's defense is in ruins, his inner circle is fracturing, and his legal jeopardy has never been greater. The man who was once his most trusted aide has become his most dangerous enemy, armed with evidence that could send him to prison for the rest of his life. As we watch this historic moment unfold, it's worth remembering that this isn't just about revenge or politics. It's about accountability. Mark Meadows was there when these alleged crimes were committed. He participated in them, he facilitated them, and now he's telling the truth about them. That's not betrayal in the traditional sense. That's someone finally choosing the truth over loyalty to a man who demanded that loyalty above all else, including the law. And the evidence is in, the testimony is on the record, and the case against Donald Trump has never been stronger. Meadows has given prosecutors everything they need and more. The question now isn't whether Trump will be convicted. With this evidence, conviction seems almost certain. The question is whether anyone else in Trump's inner circle will follow Meadows' example and flip before it's too late. Because if Meadows' testimony shows us anything, it's that when the moment of truth arrives, even Trump's most loyal soldiers will choose their own freedom over his. This courtroom eruption, this shocking betrayal, these horrific secrets, this is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump. And it came not from his enemies, not from Democrats, not from the deep state, but from the man who stood by his side through everything, who knew all his secrets, who enabled his worst impulses, and who has finally decided that enough is enough. Mark Meadows has blown up Trump's world, and there's no putting it back together again.